everybody. Welcome back to Doormat Mom No More. I'm Doormat Mom. And today we have a very special guest on our program. He's known as the Breath Geek to many on Instagram, also known as Dr. Richard L. Blake and other social media, including TikTok. And he really is an interesting gentleman. In essence, he goes against conventional therapy in a way that brings forward other types of therapies, which includes breath work and biohacking and things that we really don't know much about as a society, but he's educating us and he's helping change that. And I think it's a really great way of filling in the gaps and also looking at conventional therapy through eyes that may be taking us into the next generation of mental health and healing beyond just physical health. So I came across him on Instagram. I fell in love with his videos. I fell in love with what he was saying. He's got a very interesting background. He's been very successful in his life. And he just decided that he was going to move out of traditional success and into something that really fit him. And I think I can see how that is working for him and could eventually work for you if you follow him. So I'm going to bring on, I'm going to play this video first, the one that caught my attention, and then I'm going to bring him on. So hang on, I'm going to work my magic with this very rudimentary.
Has therapy replaced religion? Therapy isn't hard science. It's just a set of ideas people made up. And yet it's shaping our entire culture. Therapy isn't like medicine or physics. It's not built on unshakable laws of nature. It's just a lens, a way of seeing the world. And just like religion once shaped morality, therapy culture now shapes how we define health, relationships, and even reality itself. Religion once told us how to live, now therapy tells us what's healthy and what's toxic. Religions had rituals, therapy has affirmations, healing journeys, and self-work. Religions warned of sin, therapy warns of trauma. And here's the problem. People absorb this worldview without realizing. And when you accept something as truth without questioning it, it stops being a tool and starts being a belief system. Challenge a religious doctrine, you'd be excommunicated. Challenge therapy's effectiveness, you're anti-science. Therapy isn't science. It's a framework, a set of ideas. And if we're going to let it take over from religion, we have to ask, how is that working out for us? Because we now have more therapy, more psychiatric meds, more mental health awareness ever before, and yet we also have more people struggling with mental illness than at any point in history. How do we explain that? Maybe therapy isn't the problem. Maybe therapy culture is. Let's talk in the comments.
So he said a mouthful in that. And I can imagine how so many therapists took that. And so many young kids that are in therapy that and adults that just aren't getting any better. In fact, in many cases, they're getting worse. You know, I know we focus on estrangement on this podcast, parent-child estrangement. I know that therapy has absolutely impacted the magnitude of estranged families today. And when you do speak against therapy, he clearly defines it that it's not a science, but yet they push that it is a science and that it is the holy grail of health and healing. But as he has explained, it's only getting worse. And in fact, he noted this morning in another one of his videos that the health secretary in the UK just made front page news for saying that too many people are being overdiagnosed. Therapy has become this apparent panacea that's not working, and it's just becoming $1 million, $1 billion industry for those involved, whether it be treating people, medicines that come out of it, drugs and whatnot, the pharmaceutical companies, the insurance companies. So he's got a really, really, really refreshing take on all this. And I'm going to bring him on now. So, hi, Richard.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. You know how much so I am one of your biggest fans. And I really am. I'm so impressed by you and what you're doing. And it's new to me, so I know it'll be new to my audience. Um, I'd like you to discuss a little bit about your background because I know you were extremely successful. You came from seemingly a very successful, household, and then you created your own traditional success, and then you shifted gears. So tell us a little bit about that walk and how you landed where you are right now.
Yeah. So yeah, my dad was really successful in real estate, and then I went into real estate and had, a sort of satisfactory level of success. It sort of pleased the family. It was like, okay, yeah, I got a job at a good company and we got a promotion, and then sort of tick that box. And then I was like, well, this isn't really for me. Like, real estate is a good way to make money, but I don't feel that passionate about it. And I was sort of just doing it to, please other people. And also I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And yeah, during that time, I had a lot of mental health issues myself: anxiety, depression, suicide attempts, addiction, eating disorders, all that stuff. And so obviously, after hitting rock bottom, I did get therapy. I did start my self-healing journey, as I mentioned in that video, and I healed. I did. I'm free from all of those disorders. I've recovered fully. I'm very happy in my life. I haven't had an addictive episode in like 8 years or something now. So I've definitely had a lot of success, and I've also had a lot of like trial and error. There was a lot of mistakes I made along the way, and a lot of things I look back on and cringe at. And during once I left the real estate, I went into life coaching and then psychotherapy, and I started a master's in psychotherapy and did about 2 years of it. And during that time, I was obviously writing papers and was fully like, yeah, therapy's the best, everyone should be in therapy, come on therapy. But I kept on looking at like the actual results, the meta-analyses, and I would see like, oh, therapy only works for 48% of people with anxiety. Oh, and then 48% of those people relapse within a few months. And also there's loads of like publication bias. So publication bias is this thing that's a real problem in all of science, where only positive results get published because journals are for profit. They need to make money. They don't really make profit from a study that shows therapy didn't have any effect, increased effect over a placebo. So those studies just get buried. And there was another study, I think it was by Pim Kuipers. It was basically like, when you look at all these factors and you take out publication bias, relapse rates, you get a much lower success rate. And I did my own little math. It's not that scientific, but I reckon for anxiety, the success rate is about 25%. I also was looking at papers on addiction, and the addiction success rate for therapy is only about 8%. So less than 1 in 10 people actually recover from addiction with therapy. And I just got sort of tired of being like trying to argue for therapy, sort of going against the tide. It was like it was an uphill struggle. Everyone seemed to be in this ideology like therapy works, therapy, everyone needs therapy. We need more therapy, more therapists, more medications. And I was just like, I can't keep fighting this. I've got to face reality. Like, it's not that successful.
Right.
And I was also, facing the reality that the more people are in therapy, the worse mental health seems to get. And which is all these facts were just flooding me till I just had to conclude, like, okay, I can't keep arguing this. Everyone seems to be in on this. I'm just going to have to start saying what I see. And I was also studying breathwork at the time. I studied with my mentor, who I now do teacher training for, called Breath Guru, Alan Dolan. And I was seeing phenomenal changes with people. I was seeing people, say to me like, oh, I've had years of therapy and I could never change this thing. But with 5 or 6 sessions of conscious connected breath work, it's changed. My whole life has changed. I've recovered. I've been able to change my habits and let go of these things in the past. And at the same time, I was working for this charity called Duty to Care, and we were giving free medical health services to National Health Service staff. So the people who work for the the doctors, the nurses who all work for the National Health Service in the UK during COVID. And I would get calls from people saying, hey, I'm a doctor, I'm really burnt out. I've heard about this breathwork thing. What's the evidence base for it? And I was like, there isn't much. There's this kind of preliminary study. There's this pilot study. And they would just hang up the phone on me. I couldn't even give away breathwork for free. So I was like, right, well, I'm quitting my master's and I'm going to go do a PhD instead, because I already had a master's in real estate. So they let me onto the PhD program. And I was like, I'm going to test if I'm right. I'm going to test the hypothesis that conscious connected breathwork is an effective treatment for anxiety. So I did that. It took me obviously 4 or 5 years, but it was the largest randomized control trial on conscious connected breathwork. We had 108 participants, and we had incredible results. In just 6 weeks, we had a large effect size, statistical significance, people going from moderate levels of anxiety on average down to subclinical levels of anxiety. And that paper is under peer review at the moment at the Journal of Affective Disorders. So hopefully it'll be out soon. But then at the same time, I started doing social media, talking about these problems of traditional therapy, in that everyone seems to be talking about therapy good, therapy great, you're traumatized, your parents did this to you. The reason you're not successful as everyone else in life is not because you have a low IQ or you're low in conscientiousness and high in neuroticism. It's because someone did something to you and someone is holding you back, and it's not your fault. And we're going to find out, and we're going to point the finger at them, so you don't have to take any responsibility. And the way I've kind of had success is from like this kind of gray area, right? Because therapy does work for some people. As I said, like 48% of people it seems to work for. But yeah, a lot of those people relapse. Maybe it works for like 2 in 10. Right. So those people scream and shout about the benefits of therapy, and it helped them. And then when I say therapy doesn't work, they're like, yeah, it does. It works for me. I was traumatized. Like, yeah, you probably were. You probably did get benefits from therapy. But also there's loads and loads of harms caused by therapy. And there are a lot of reasons for those harms that we can go into if you like.
Well, I was really interested in 2 studies that you point out in a number of your videos. The Loftus study, which was in 1995, and then the 2025, there was a study done by Pathis. Is it Pathis et al.?
Pathis,
can you share those? Because those are striking, what you say with regards, and it makes sense to me, but
yeah. So the Elizabeth Loftus study, some people tried to tell me it was debunked, but I did actually look into it, and it wasn't debunked. It was just, they actually replicated it. So basically what Elizabeth Loftus did was she brought in a load of people, and they kind of played the game 2 truths and a lie, or 3 truths and a lie. They had them remember 3 memories, things that actually happened in their life. And then they planted a fake memory that each person got lost in a shopping mall and were recovered by a kind stranger, and they basically got their family to tell them that it was true, and they got the therapist to tell them it was true, and the people believed them. And they found like they weren't lying. These people actually, they kind of put them on like a lie detector test. Their bodies reacted just like a real memory. They believed this lie to the point they were describing the thing. They remember the shops, they remember the colors, they remember the people that were around there, but none of it happened.
Isn't that insane, but not? I mean, honestly, can you imagine having that? I could see how that happened. There's the power of suggestion. And then when you have all like you've laid all the facts in your head, and that's why they say memory is so faulty, because, you think you remember all, the exact, and it's not the exact. It's some sort of version of what might have happened. And that's a problem with what's going on in the estrangement world today, as far as with parents and children, because parents remember one thing and children are remembering something completely else. And then they're being doubled. That trauma that they apparently went through has been double down on because they're constantly revisiting negativity and the suggestion. So that goes into the other study. So explain that study.
Yeah, so Dr. Lawrence Patihis, we had him on our podcast. I can connect you to him as well. So he's a professor at the University of Portsmouth, and he's like an expert witness on memory. Like, he goes to court and sort of explains how fallible memory is in trials and things as well. But he's also very concerned about therapy and its impact on society. But he basically did this study where they kind of gave suggestions to people about memories and about their mothers, and they did it in like a really like kind of like good-willed way. They were even like pretty neutral. They asked them, like, you know, to recount a memory of their mothers, and the more people spoke about their memories of the mothers, the worse their opinions of their mothers became. So people would go in with like, yeah, I had a reasonable childhood, and then they would get worse, and they'd be like, oh yeah, my mum was abusive, basically. And yeah, this study is pretty shocking, but it shows how influential therapy can be on changing people's beliefs, especially about their parents. And as I kind of hint in the video, it's like family estrangement is going way up, therapy is going way up. I obviously, correlation doesn't equal causation, but I would bet my house on the fact that therapy is contributing to the increase in estrangement.
I would bet my house too. I would absolutely bet my house, the guy down the street's house, everybody. I will assume that. But no, absolutely. And you know what? You know, you can look on social media and you hear some of these therapists speak, and you can completely understand why, you know, not only is, you know, the mental health issues expanding, but the advice that so many of these therapists, you know, TikTok and whatnot, therapists are giving can be so damaging. And now that doesn't say, and I'm gonna speak for you too, because you mentioned it. That doesn't say that there aren't some great therapists out there. I absolutely believe there are great therapists out there. Yeah. Absolutely. But they're like so few and far between that you have to really just, if you have one, you better, you know, hold on to dear life, because that's it's an incredible injustice to be vulnerable and needing help and be put in front of a therapist that has now assumed the position of God. And there's so many of them who have. And to your point about, you know, it's become our new, in essence, religion. You hit the nail on the head for so many. It has. If you go against therapy, if you go against what therapists are saying, you'll get ostracized. I mean, I know I get like, you know, hell's fury thrown at me every day. But like you, so, you know, we have to, when you start seeing a wrong, you have to start saying something. You have to start, you know, it's not just about you. It's about, you know, all of us. So you have to, sometimes you just have to be that one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of people, when I criticize therapy, people say, well, good therapists don't say this. And I say, okay, well, let's say the same thing about parachutes. You could be like, you know, good parachutes open. It's like, yeah, but what about all the bad parachutes? Like, let's be worried about the parachutes that don't open. Like, let's make sure all parachutes are open and all therapists are good.
That's a good analogy. I like that. I heard the wildest story yesterday from a therapist I was speaking with. She'll be on the show in later in the month. But she was telling me that she knows therapists who actually want to follow me. They want to follow my videos, but they are terrified. They are terrified to follow me because they're worried about what others will think of them if they want to learn and hear the other side, or if they agree with something that traditional therapists who, you know, who sit in that one spot of being the larger group within that field, if you go against that, you get backlash from them too. And so that shocked me when she told me that, because you can't solve problems if you don't know both sides. But yet they're treating these, in our case, they're strange children without ever talking to the parents in so many cases. So how do you do that if you don't understand the full situation? You can't. You can't do it well. So yeah, so I just found that shocking. But so then you go from this path of moving into something that's a lot less known, unconventional, and yet you're seeing cases where it's working. So talk about breath work, talk about biohacking, talk about that world that most of us know nothing about, and give us a sense of how it can help us.
Yeah, so conscious connected breathwork is the one I did my study in, and it's the one I teach most often. I think when people hear breathwork, they think I'm going to teach them how to breathe, so functional breathing, which I do, or they think I'm going to help them relax, like doing box breathing or 4-7-8 breathing, which again, useful tools. But this one that I teach is more akin to a psychedelic ceremony. So with psychedelic assisted therapies, like psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, etc., you are going into an altered state, and you go into a similar altered state with conscious connected breathwork. And they have done studies now on this, MRI studies and EEG studies showing that cerebral hemodynamics, basically blood flow in the brain, and brain waves change to the same extent as you would see in a moderate dose of psilocybin mushrooms. So it is really changing the brain. And Stanislav Grof, Dr. Stanislav Grof, was the kind of founder of this. He's a Czech-American psychiatrist. He was learning about this in the sort of 60s and 70s because he was doing a lot of LSD-assisted psychotherapy research, and he noticed that towards the end of the ceremonies, people would start breathing in this conscious, connected way. So when they'd made LSD illegal, he reverse engineered this, and he was like, what if I just make people breathe that way? And he did actually fine. Yeah, you can get people into these altered states just through breathing alone. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to get people to change, especially after age 30. The brain loses a lot of plasticity. It becomes fairly rigid at age 30. And so people can know, oh yeah, I need to quit my job. Oh yeah, I need to make my bed. Oh yeah, I need to eat healthy, but they don't make these changes. And with therapy, Stanislav Grof said, my clients could give you dissertations in their attachment styles, in their trauma histories, in all of their problems, but the problems didn't change. They only changed once they went into these altered states. And the reason for that, or the hypothesis for that, is there are several, but one of my favorites is the pivotal mental states hypothesis. So pivotal mental states is basically this evolutionary design to get us to change. So when a huge event happens, when like someone has a baby for the first time and they were really irresponsible driving a fast car, and then they get a Volvo or something really safe, and they completely change, right? That is because they've entered this state of plasticity in their brain, this pivotal mental state where they have to change. It also happens with, when someone gets really, really sick, they make a change, or someone dies, their parent dies. People are able to make these changes when a huge life event happens.
Right.
But the idea is when you're doing psychedelic assisted therapies and conscious connected breath work, you get this activation of the serotonin 5-HT2A receptors in the brain, and that creates this plasticity, and then people are able to go and make the changes that they weren't able to before.
Well, that's fascinating. I can imagine what that looks like. What would be an example of a practice? Could you do one with me right now? Is there possible?
No, it's not. It's really powerful. So I would need you to sign a waiver. Oh yeah, it'd be a bit like me. Like, can I give you some LSD right now? I'd be a little bit irresponsible. So yeah, a lot of people say like, "Oh, can you teach us this on Instagram?" I'm like, "Hell no, this is not safe to do." You need, well, obviously you need to screen for mental health conditions. There's a lot of contraindications and things like that. You need to prepare people. You need to you wouldn't just take LSD and then go to work, right? You need like time for integration, basically, because it is super potent.
That's in itself is interesting that you said that. So you need to sign a waiver, folks. So just make sure you're aware. That's how potent this is. Wow. So, and how long when people, let's say people want to work with you, How long are the sessions? Do they sign up for a number of sessions, or do they commit to, let's say, let's do 6 sessions and how does that work with you?
Yeah, so I work on Zoom mostly. With most
Okay.
most of my clients come from all around the world. So my study, my randomized control trial, was done on Zoom. It was the first study to test this type of breathwork on Zoom, and it's just as effective on Zoom as it is in person. There are sort of trade-offs in person to on Zoom. You're in the comfort of your own home. You don't have to travel. Those types of things. Some people prefer doing it in person. It's kind of it's a matter of preference really. But yeah, the sessions are 90 minutes. People just need a laptop, a good internet connection. I need to be able to see them to sort of make sure their breath they're adhering to the technique, because as people drift off into this altered state, their breath changes and then they go back to normal breathing. So I'm there basically going, open your mouth wider, breathe faster, breathe
Right.
here more. So it's like a constant like spinning of plates. You have to always be being like, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. So that's why you need a facilitator, and make sure you get a certified facilitator, because there's a lot of people out there, they go to a breath workshop, they're amazed by it, and then they're like, I could do this. And then they have people going into terrible episodes and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of cowboys out there. I'm a part of the Global Breathwork Practitioners Alliance, trying to raise the standards of breathwork. But yeah, they're 90 minutes. I normally say to people, do one session, and if you love it, then book a package of 6. And I give people a discount for a package of 6. And my study, found that complete remission on average of moderate levels of anxiety with 6 sessions. So I do say, 6 sessions is a good amount of time. For more severe conditions, there was a study done by DeWitt and Moraes Cruz, and they had someone with severe PTSD, and they found remission of that with 8 sessions. So maybe you need 8 sessions, maybe you need more, maybe you need just 1 or 2.
Do you work with, and have you thought about working with some of the veterans or some people that come back from engaging in violence, and war and whatnot? Have you worked with?
I haven't. No, I haven't. I'm open to it, but just I haven't been presented with that opportunity.
Gosh, I would love to see you do that and see what that what they would be, what the outcome would be at the end of those. I would say, I think probably 6 to 8 to 10 session, possibly, unfortunately, because I think that's a whole other area that you could move into with tremendous, really a wonderful thing to be able to do for these people. What about biohacking? So biohacking, explain it. What is it? How do you do it?
Yeah. So biohacking, I think a lot of people roll their eyes at it, and there's a lot of misconceptions about it. I think some people think it's like planting chips in your body, etc., and things like that. But it's kind of an amorphous term, but it's sort of people who want to take responsibility for their healing. They've been let down by traditional medicine. They want to go to root causes instead of just symptom management. So there's a lot of different biohacks you can do. A lot of them are very expensive. A lot of them are completely free. So an expensive one would be hyperbaric oxygen therapy that I love. I have a chamber, and I go in that and I do my work in there, and it's good for anti-aging. It's good for traumatic brain injuries, which I've had some of. And then a free one would just be doing intermittent hypoxia. So there's another type of breath work I do called soma breath work, where you're basically breathing in a rhythm and then you do some breath holds, and you can get some of the same benefits there. And I have videos on YouTube if people want to check out soma breath work for free. Okay. Another one you can do is pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. So that's a type of magnetism, and it pulses and it makes your muscles twitch, and it basically opens up the channels, the voltage gated calcium channels of the cells, and it basically speeds up healing in some way. A free way of doing that is just standing on the earth barefoot, picking up the Schumann resonance. So especially like at the beach or where there's dewy grass, that water increases conductivity because the earth is giving out this 7.8 hertz frequency at all times.
That's there's I guess I know that as grounding yourself, and I actually do ground. I'm going to say no, she's not. But I do ground myself. I think it's really interesting. I think all these things, there's so much more to discover about healing, and if we only keep our eyes on therapy and in what we know it to be, then we lose all these opportunities in other ways. I think that's really something that we're not very elastic in our outlook as far as helping ourselves to heal.
Yeah.
I think that's moving forward.
Yeah, this is another thing that I sort of preach about on social media. It's like someone has, let's say, low mood, depression, anxiety, and they go to a therapist and they're like, okay, who caused this? But there's so many causes of therapy of mental illness that are not related to events in your life or things people have said to you. So mold is a huge one that causes mental health issues. A lack of vitamin D, a lack of sunlight is another cause of mental illness. And then you look at other treatments that outperform SSRIs, antidepressants. So on the Hamilton scale, a good night's sleep is 3 times more effective than SSRIs for depression. Exercise is twice as effective on the Hamilton scale as SSRIs. So yeah, if people aren't exercising, they're eating junk food. Ultra processed food is now linked to mental illness. Blood sugar crashes. If people are eating junk, they're not getting sunlight, they're not exercising, they don't have community, they can be doing all these things completely wrong, which society basically rewards us for. Society just wants us to eat ultra processed food, consume junk news, consume social media, consume the television, and just sit there and just expect to be happy without doing any work. And then people are surprised why they're miserable, because like you look at their lifestyle and it's completely backwards. And then they go to therapy and it's like, let's not talk about how much news you watch. Let's talk about the trauma of someone told me their kid accused them of traumatizing them because they threw away their moldy jelly shoes when they were a kid, and the therapist said, yeah, that was trauma. But then there's another study that showed that people who watched like 2 hours of news coverage of the Boston Marathon bombing had more PTSD than people who were actually there.
I believe that. I think, and you're not wrong in the essence that we live in a society that rewards bad habits. And because those bad habits can result in a pill to make you not feel that bad about the bad habits. But people, I think one of the biggest problems in our society is people don't sleep. People don't sleep. And even when they're sleeping, they're so anxious about everything under the sun. The kids, the job, the economy, what the simple things like I have to go grocery shopping tomorrow. I have no food in the house. That all weighs in your mind when you're trying to sleep, and then you don't sleep. And I think sleep deprivation is a huge part of mental illness that no one really talks about. It's like it's a passing blip article in the New York Times on occasion, but people don't address that. There's so many other things, like some of the other scientists throughout history, recent history, are saying, look, it's not. It's some of this is just your genetics. This is Aunt Mabel from 10 generations back. That her depression is now your depression. That's real. And but people don't want to believe that. And I'm like, what did you think? That like all of your genealogy is just disappears when each generation? No, you drag it with you. The fact that is so astounding to people today, and they don't even look at that, right? So a lot of these problems have everything to do with genetics too. And that doesn't mean that there aren't environmental causes. That doesn't mean that there isn't trauma, that certain households truly have traumatized kids. I mean, honestly, it's just so I think it's a very interesting place that we're at, and I'm glad that you're sort of now pulling people forward in this new way, because it all works together. I think in the end, it all works together, and you can't just fix the one leg and and then the rest of your body is going to work equally as well, so to speak. It's not
Yeah.
how it's ever going to work. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so let me ask, you mention on your site there are a number of products that you absolutely love. And is there any one product that people, when they go to your site, which they will go to your site, please go to his site. I'm going to leave all the links and all of the write up that I do underneath this. Um, what's one that you would say out of all of them, maybe you want to get this one?
Mm. Yeah, obviously budget comes into it. If people do want to spend a bit of money, then you can get a really good return on these things. I often think like red light is one of my favorite ones. So infrared light panels, I do that every morning, and I think I've got links to Red Light Rising, a company who creates panels. There's a lot of good brands out there, but red light kind of simulates sunrise. Traditionally, ancestrally, we would see the sunrise. We would wake up, we would get that infrared light on our skin. It turns on all these DNA reactions, and it sets our circadian rhythm as well. So speaking about sleep, good sleep starts in the morning. You're supposed to go out and see sunlight and get blue light in the morning so that your body knows, okay, it's morning time. Let's boost cortisol, lower melatonin. But in the UK and maybe in the north of the US, you can't see sunrise until like 8:45 in the morning, and most people are in the car on the way to work there. So you can kind of simulate sunrise with these red light panels. Red light also is an anti-inflammatory as well, so it's good for healing injuries. It's also really good for creating collagen and elastin in the face, so it's a really good like anti-aging thing to keep our skin looking younger. It also feeds the mitochondria, so the mitochondria, this or the energy powerhouse of our cells. So we can get energy from food, but we can actually create energy from light as well. And it helps with processes like methylation. Poor methylation is another cause of depression that people never think about. It's just how our cells sort of clean themselves out. If they're not cleaning themselves out, we can get low mood and mental illness. So yeah, red light is one of these things. It's like you can buy a nice expensive red light panel, or you can see the sunrise. That's the free hack.
Okay. You may have to get up a little earlier to see that sunrise or move. What do you think? Richard, do you think, this is an off question, I was going to, it just came to mind. Do you think that our Earth has everything in it and on it that we need to survive and survive well? It's just that we don't know half of what's available, not even a quarter, what to use it to our benefit. Do you
Yeah.
think that? Because I think that, but I want to know what you think. I could be wrong, but I want to know what you think.
Yes, I do. And I think there are populations you can look at. Have you heard of the blue zones?
Yeah,
Yeah. So the
I'm
blue zones,
fascinated with them.
yeah, I did also hear that that research won the Ig Nobel Prize. So the Ig
Yeah.
Nobel Prize is for the worst science of the year. So basically, what they found in these blue zones were they weren't necessarily living the longest, but actually these were the highest areas in the world with the highest amount of pension fraud. So what was actually happening was people's grandmothers were dying at like 78 on average, and they were just not reporting it and collecting the pensions for another 40 years.
No way! Oh no!
Yeah. So that was really disappointing. But I think there are other populations we can look at, like the Amish, right? We don't have the Amish in the UK, but they are incredibly healthy, right? Talk about
Right.
sleep. They have the lowest amount of micro awakenings of any population ever studied, right? So we all have micro awakenings in the night. I wake up loads. I have really bad sleep efficiency. They sleep through the night, right? Because they have community. They know that, okay, I've got my cousin, my brother, my mum, my dad, my grandma, my kid, like all really close, whereas we're all so disconnected. I live in the US, I'm from the UK, and my family are over there. So there is this kind of like nervous system stress of being far away from our kin that the Amish are able to hack. They also don't use technology. They also work really, really hard. They have purpose in that they are always building something, and that they're building something meaningful that they can sort of see the benefits of. It's not just like, let's say you're in a call center and you work for Google. You're not getting any of the profits from Google. You're not connected to the success of Google. But
Yeah.
when you're building a house for your cousin, you can see that house and how happy they are together.
Right.
And yeah, they eat basic food. They don't eat ultra processed foods. They have family values, and they live within the land. They're out in nature all the time. So I think those guys are doing very wise things, and they're happy, and they they live long.
Do you know, I hear a funny story? When I had my little ones, I went to the Amish country in Pennsylvania for a week. And after I came back, I'm like, we're going to live like the Amish, or as close to the Amish. we're literally, I'm not kidding, for a good month. We were living like Amish, less like the electricity part of it. But we were. There was no television. There was just reading and, and spending time. And I tell you what, it definitely made a difference in our closeness, the things that we did together. We were always a fairly close family as it is, but when I walked away, I was so taken by how they exist and those relationships that they've been able to mentor. And I think community is such a big part of our health. And today, I think as much as we have the ability to stay connected, we're so distant from each other. It's had the opposite effect. And so I think that that's another thing that we really have to work on as a society. And not just in the U.S., because we are a global community right now, which means you have to make sure you call your mom. If you're living in the U.S. and come from the U.K., so make sure you stay in touch with your parents.
Yes, yeah, and I think therapy culture is harming our social connections, and especially our family connections. And I think there's this sort of like second order consequence fallacy with therapy, because therapists often encourage people to cut out toxic people, and they label normal behavior as abusive, so then it seems like it's justified to cut off a family member. But whilst families are all stressful, I don't know anyone who isn't stressed out by their family. The buffer that they offer to more serious stresses, like when you lose your job, when you are really sick, it's your family who are going to give you a couch to sleep on. It's your family who are going to turn up at the hospital bed. It's not the friends you've made, it's not the co-workers, it's the family who are going to be there to buffer against that really, really serious stress. Whereas we seem to be like, oh, okay, family's a little bit stressful, I don't want to deal with that, so I'm sacrificing the huge buffer that my parents and brothers, sisters, grandparents offer during actual serious catastrophic events. And I think that's contributing to the mental health crisis.
100%. I agree with you 100%. I know that that estrangement phenomenon, that the epidemic that is happening, is really ripping. I'll speak for the parents. Ripping them apart in many ways. Some, the number of people that I speak to who are estranged from their kids, who have thought about suicide, who really don't know how to go on, who they're caught in this loop of what did they do wrong, or they're caught in the loop where they've never given an answer. The estrangement just happened, and then they got all the negativity from the other side, from therapists and whatnot. Well, you had to do something, you did something, you are to blame. And they sit there and they really don't know where to go, because that's their family. That's what they have. That's what, and I feel for so many parents in the situation. And I worry about the future. I worry about what example that sets. I worry about what that's going to mean later on down the line, for the new families that think they're doing right. But I've never seen karma or not come to pass. I've never seen it. If you want to call it karma, if you want to call it God, history does repeat. And no one can run from the lessons they need to learn. And a therapist isn't going to be a buffer to that.
No, I think there is a problem in therapy of an ideological capture. There's a statistic that 96% of psychology or social psychology professors are left-wing or at least liberal, and something like 40% of them say they would discriminate against conservative people. And in left-wing ideologies, Rob Henderson talks about this in his amazing book Troubled. There is this idea of luxury beliefs. So Rob Henderson was this kid from like foster homes and wrong side of the tracks, but then manages to get a scholarship to Yale and does his PhD at Oxford, and went from the bottom of society to the top, and found that these people would say things like, "Oh, family doesn't matter. Divorce is a good thing. You don't need dads," and they would, like, something like 90% of his class came from two parent homes, yet they were all saying, "No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter."
Yeah.
But then statistics like boys in the US who come from single parent homes are more likely to go to prison than to graduate from college. And there's this thing of like, the elites keep the structures that work, like two parent homes, like being in touch with their families, but then they try and pacify people who, down below by saying, "No, don't worry, you get a divorce, you'll be fine." When the reality is like, it's really harmful to break up a family.
Yeah. It's, it's the hard truth. It's the inconvenient truth, and you just, in an essence, there's a classism to it. This isn't just, I always say, this isn't just happening, it's happening for a reason, I think. And, I think it has everything to do with control, who maintains control. And, an unhealthy society is much easier to control than a healthy one. Happy people are harder to control than unhappy people. When you don't have a family, it's much easier to hang your hat on the next community that welcomes you through the door. And so there's all these reasons to keep people separated, a family separated, and sick. And it's unfortunate, but that's the truth. And I think people have to look at it through larger eyes. It's the same with, with what you're doing. It's new to so many people. And some people say, no, it's a bunch of hooey, but take a step back and look at it through larger eyes. Here's some success. Here's some, something different that maybe it's new. Maybe it's new to you, but for other people, it's working. So, if you're hurting and one thing isn't helping, try something else. And I think that's where you come in. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this. And I really appreciate what you're doing out there. I really do, on so many levels, because I know what you're saying, going against the science that isn't science is hard. and but you're doing it really well. And so I'm hoping that through this, other people will find you, and use your services and learn more. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I hope to have you back at some point.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
You can do the background. I'll sign a waiver. No,
Yeah. Do it. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Richard, thank you so much. All right, I will send you everything, links and clips and everything. But thank you. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks a lot.
All right, bye-bye. There you have it. He's delightful, and I love what he's doing. Please check him out. Please check him out. You're going to love his videos. He teaches so many wonderful things. He's very insightful. He's very smart. And you have to be open yourself up to new opportunities and new ways of healing, because there's so many out there. We just have a small glimpse of how to heal, and it's not working for everybody. So, all right, before I go, I'm going to remind you, pick up Doormat Mom No More. This is one of those books that has caused a lot of controversy, and because it's saying things that also goes against conventional group group think, group speak. And so, but it's all about community. And it's a reminder that there is a community out there for you to help you through your estrangement. And we all need that support. That's one of the most important parts of being able to heal from estrangement and move forward, is that community support. And that has been proven. So pick up that book, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Doormat Mom No More. Till then.